Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Hope you're enjoying yourself on this Saturday morning. We have a conversation today that is a follow up from last week. We were talking about confirmation bias last Saturday. So today we want to kind of continue down the lines. And I thought it'd be fun if we could talk about how to navigate crazy people online. Specifically, how do you navigate an illogical debate? The internet is full of illogical debates. And one of the things that we were talking about as we were noodling around with these things was something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And Rachael is got it all queued up and she's going to talk to us about it because we kind of wanted to anchor the first part of this conversation in this thing that we discovered.
Okay, I'm just going to give a short sentence. It says the Dunning-Kruger effect is defined as the tendency of people with low ability in a specific area to give overly positive assessments of this ability. This is often seen as a cognitive bias, as in systematic tendency to engage in erroneous forms of thinking and judging. It's a psychological phenomenon. You can do all the research on it yourself. But basically, it's like, you know that phrase, like they know just enough to get themselves in trouble, or, just enough to be dangerous. It's this idea of, we tend to, if we have a little bit of knowledge in a subject, we tend to automatically simplify it in our brains and make it very simple and make it very like, oh, I understand this concept and, I know all I need to know about it. Whereas someone who's a true expert in an area, let's say someone who's like an astrophysicist who just knows all about astrophysics and they've spent their entire life learning about it. Well, that person is going to be more intellectually honest and be like, I know a lot, but what we don't know is just so vast. This idea is like the more you know about something, the more you realize how complex and how deep a subject is and how really how small your understanding actually is. We kind of do this with God. It's like if somebody has a very simplistic view of God, they're like, yeah, God's like this. Simple answer, simple thing. No biggie. But if you really get to know God and you really read the word of God and you don't have just such a childlike simplistic view of God, you realize we don't know half of what he is. We are just honored that he's even begun to show us who he is. And there's just such a vastness and infinity to God that we can't even begin to comprehend. And I would say this Dunning-Kruger effect is seen a lot on social media. And one example I can give that I saw recently is that you have this mother who was saying that she has a special needs kid that has a lot of difficulties and a lot of things that would just be off-putting to an average person. It's like you see an 8-year-old. This 8-year-old is still drinking milk out of a bottle. Okay, you would look at that situation and go, that's weird. But this special needs mom is like, look, we're working with them between the autism and the mental disability. The doctors are working on it. The therapists are working on it. I try every day to switch him out from a bottle to some other way of drinking. But no matter what I do at this stage, he's just not able to switch out. And it's really disheartening because I try to hide the fact that he's drinking out of a bottle, but it's really that's the only way we can get nutrition in him. And the comment replies, and it was just crazy because you had all these people who are like, well, just use this kind of bottle, or hey, have you tried this? Because people want to be helpful, right? They really do. They want to be helpful. They want to have the answer. They want to be like, well, but the fact is here you have an extremely complex situation. And I can personally attest to this because I have a special needs child. You have a lot of doctors, a lot of experts, a lot of therapists, and you're, as a parent, is doing your best.
Yeah.
And here you have people just questioning you and going, well, if it was my kid, I would have them drinking out of a different cup. And you're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just looking out from the outside, and suddenly you're a keyboard warrior expert.
Yeah.
As if you read her comment, she's like, look, I'm working with multiple doctors, the therapist, and she even said the school system, everybody around this kid is doing their best and trying everything.
And that's
so
a big
if like
deal.
a whole team of probably 15 plus people are working on this and the kid's just not ready for it, you suggesting, well, did you try this sippy cup, is not necessarily helpful.
Are they all wrong? The parent and the therapist and the doctors, they're all wrong?
And that's the point. It's like for the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's like, well, I'm not going to take the word of your doctor. You said your doctor said that, but you can't trust your doctor. I watched more YouTube videos than your doctor. So like, you should listen to me. Or it's like I said, it's just enough knowledge to get yourself into trouble, but not enough knowledge to truly understand and grasp the concept and the complexity of something.
Yeah.
And that's where you get a lot of these keyboard warriors. So a lot of these people are just straight up going, here's my opinion. This is what I'm saying. I know better than you. Is because they know just enough to be dangerous and not enough to be an expert. And there have been plenty of times where I see a claim online and everyone's like, yeah, totally. And then you'll have an expert be like, hey, actually, I'm in that field. I do this for a living. I went to school for X, Y, and Z, and this is actually how it works. It's a simple explanation. This is what's causing it. That's how it works. Now, you could be like, well, I don't know if they're telling the truth. Well, true. But at the same time, it's like, but everyone will ignore them. Be like, I don't care that you're an expert. You're just towing the party line, or you're just a plant, or you're just, right? Like, it's like,
that's true.
So you can be an expert, but with somebody who's dealing with the Dunning-Kruger effect, they won't listen to an expert. They won't listen to somebody who's educated in something. They won't even entertain it because they're listen, I don't trust you. I trust me.
We've all been there.
Yes.
At some point in our life, we have all been there. We have all learned something and been like, no, this is the truth.
Yeah.
You don't know.
And, there's things where I've told people like, hey, what about this? And they're like, well, I've always heard this. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just presenting it to you. Try it. And then eventually they look into it and they go, oh, yeah, like I looked into that and it actually is like great and blah, blah, blah.
So Rachel has lost the train of thought, which is okay because I wanted to say something. So maybe this will get us back on track. Two things. The first thing is when you were talking earlier about like how the more you know, the more you're likely to like defer what's actually factual or not. When I was a personal trainer, I was very young, and like all of the certain science and things that was going around back then was what it was, right? So you would say things to all your clients like, no, this is the way to do it, and blah, blah, blah. And then I was so devout and like, I'm like, no, but this is the way. This is all, I was so sure of it. And now as an older person looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I want to go back and apologize to some of those people. Like some of these things are so wrong. And then, I had a friend years later whose younger sibling was getting into personal training, and they were telling them like, hey, this is how you should eat. This is what you should do. And I'm like, bro, like if anyone is that confident and that sure when they're just starting something, like do not listen to what they're saying, because like that's not sound. The other thing I'll say real quick is that I've seen doctors that have said, if you have a doctor that has all of the answers, then you need to go find a new doctor. Because doctors who really spend a lot of time researching and studying their field will often say, yeah, we just don't have the answer for that. Or I don't really know. And doctors who are confident enough to say, like, I don't really know, but I can research it or I can look into it are the best doctors, and not the ones who are like, oh, yes, that's exactly how this works or whatever. I know all the answers.
I know, Virginia, I'll say this for your sake because I know you enjoy it. Remember how they used to say you got to turn your fat into muscle?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There is no metamorphosis happening, okay? Like just that phrase, like your fat is not turning into muscle.
No.
Your fat cells shrink and your muscle cells grow. But just like stupid statements like that, people would make like, yeah, I got to turn my fat into muscle.
And that's what I got from it, was like this, the general, like, get rid of your fat and build your muscle.
Yeah, but they didn't say that. You gotta like turn it. Or muscle or fat, muscle weighs more than fat, which is not really like accurate.
Well, it's accurate in the scale, but people get the scale wrong.
But volume, what it is. But like I say, these are like inaccurate, like approximations of what they're trying to say. What they're really trying to say is like fat is higher volume for the same amount of weight. So you could have a pound of fat and a pound of muscle. A pound of fat looks like this, a pound of muscle looks like this.
Right.
So it's really a volume difference. But
Right.
like, you know, people don't know that. They just repeat phrases. You know how people
Right.
just like regurgitate? Like, oh, came across this on the internet where somebody said, did you know that this word in Hebrew means X? Now, the word they're talking about is actually an acronym. By the way, this is an acronym meaning, like, you know, you're saying like life for your soul, LFYS, right? If you were to say life for your soul, FLYS in Hebrew means despicable. and then be like, can you believe it? Can you believe that they named their show Life for Your Soul?
You know what
and the
I heard?
acronym in Hebrew means despicable.
You know what's also is equally as ridiculous is Alexander Pagani, who we love. Someone commented, Apostle, the word pagan is in your last name. I can't believe you have not legally changed your last name.
Yeah.
I'm like, for real?
For real. So here you have the, because let's think about this. One, there is no LYS, you know, Life for Your Soul acronym in Hebrew. You'd have to find some Hebrew word that maybe looks like it or sounds like it, which is what's going on with this other word. And it's like an approximation. It's not even the same word. It's not even the same thing. But somebody on the internet said it means this. Like I said, like it means despicable in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? So suddenly you have 50 people in the comments repeating the same lie because it sounds so good and it's an easy, quick quip.
It's uneducated.
It's so uneducated.
Like every job you've ever worked at, if you've worked at any kind of larger job, you'll have OSHA posters in the break room, right? Mm-hmm. OSHA, we all know the word OSHA because it's an organization, but it's an acronym and it's about worker safety. But it's the same thing of someone being like, oh yeah, well, OSHA means XYZ. And you're like, bro, OSHA's an acronym. Like it's not a word. And like you can look at it and be like, you're just not educated. Like you're missing this piece of information.
But what I love is these people going, it's like this in Hebrew. And like, so like to Snopes or whatever it is that does the debunking.
Yeah.
They asked a Hebrew scholar and the Hebrew scholar's like, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Like, it's like, there's no word that means that. And the closest word to that actually doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
And like the word that they're saying actually like doesn't look anything like this root word that they're saying it comes from. He's like, it just does not compute. The math ain't mathin'. But because some layperson looked up some book, Hebrew lexicon, and saw something that kind of looked like what it was, and one of the options of the meaning, not the sole meaning, one of the options, because remember, Hebrew words mean a lot of different things. One of the options was, negative. They're like, see. So here you, and that's the thing, it's dangerous. You get these keyboard warriors that get a little, like I said, just enough knowledge to be kooky. And confirmation biased and aggressive and overconfident and pushy, and you can't argue with them, you can't debate with them, they won't listen, they'll resort to insults because they don't have the intellectual facts to back up their argument calmly, succinctly, with a rational mind. They start throwing insults and stuff. Real quick, so I don't know how long this episode is going to be, but I just wanted to insert this real fast. There is a fabulous book. Now, mind you, it's not written by a Christian. I'm sorry if you're offended if I'm recommending a book not written by a Christian, but it's a really fascinating book called Fantasyland. And it says how America went haywire, and it says a 500-year history. It's by Kurt Anderson. So he's an investigative journalist, I believe, and he just does a deep dive into like the psychology of Americans, like America, like the groupthink that America deals with. And it's really, really fascinating. So if you want to kind of get into the why behind all the different conspiracy theories and all the different stuff that we deal with in America, I do highly recommend it. I think he goes all the way back to the Salem witch trials, and like he does a whole gambit of what makes. And he talks about what makes America different from like England and other countries. Like our groupthink is different.
Yeah, it is.
And how it's actually explains a lot of like how these cults like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, like how all this stuff came to be and why it happened in America versus other countries. It's just really fascinating. So it's Fantasyland by Kurt Anderson.
That's really cool.
But
well,
yeah,
let's
highly
wrap up the
recommend.
conversation with chicken.
Oh no.
I want to say it because I found it very funny. I don't know how we don't have to talk about it long, but this is just a funny little cherry on the top of this conversational Sunday because on a Saturday, because we were talking about chicken. I don't even remember exactly what we were talking about, but Rachel said something about chicken breasts and the video of the people comparing chicken breast sizes. And I off the cuff, and I'm just like, well, yeah, because there's like all GMO chicken, okay? Now genetically modified, right? So all the breasts are larger. And then Rachel's like, well, the chickens are bred to like they take the chicken lines and they intermix the breeds to create breeds that are large, but like the chickens themselves are not injected with any hormones. And I was like, but aren't they? And Rachel's like, no, it's illegal. It's been illegal for a long time. So immediately I'm like, let's go look it up. And of course, on the USDA website, it says that hormones in chicken and poultry have been banned since the 1950s. Okay, so in the 1950s, hormones or steroids, both of them banned. So I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty legit. But then the very top shirts that pops up is a nationwide survey reveals 77% of Americans believe that chickens contain added hormones. I was like, I was a part of the 77%.
But there it goes, because like you look at a chicken, like for example, so there's a video of this guy going, he got a chicken breast from the butcher and a chicken breast from Walmart. Well, of course, the chicken breast from Walmart is conventionally raised like bred chickens to be huge. They have the big breasts. Of course, it's bigger. Plus, the cut isn't as slim. They have the extra hang off meat, like the tenderloin is attached. And that's another thing that was a little dishonest. It had the tenderloin meat attached too. So, like, it wasn't as trimmed. But, the one breast was like 3 pounds or something. And the other one was like a 1 pound. Now, they do have retained water, and that's true. Like, they will inject saline solution in the breast and all that. But
shameful.
But the comments were just like, hormones! Like, come on. Hormones! Why the chicken breast so big?
Well,
and
honestly,
from Walmart.
There's a big conversation in young people that are getting puberty earlier and earlier and earlier. And one of the main proponents of this is the hormones that's in our meat.
Well, see, there are hormones given to milking cows. So this is where you need to do your research, because hormones do play into some of the stuff, right? But not all the things. Like, for example, chicken, no hormones allowed. It's illegal. But you can do some hormone treatment to dairy cows to make them produce more milk, which makes sense because milk production is hormonally driven.
Yes.
So, like, do you see where there's a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of mix-up doesn't make you smarter? Like,
yes.
You go, hormones in milk, milking cows. Okay, well, that must mean hormones are in everything.
And I will say, for people who are potentially interested in this topic, because it's interesting to me, because in the way my brain works, like if you're intermixing breeds of chickens to have chickens that are just naturally bigger, in my mind, I'm like, well, it might be genetic modification, but it's kind of is in the sense of like you're selective. It's really selective breeding.
It's selective breeding, just like dogs.
Right. Which is valid. But if you ever see things, a lot of with the word heritage, I see it more in pork than I do in poultry. Mm-hmm. But heritage, if you're interested, just means that they come from lines that have not had any of that selective breeding. There's a line that produces some kind of quality that's good, and they don't mess with it. It's so fun fact for those who are interested.
Yeah, so
I just thought that was hilarious.
I think another way you can say that is, how when people read a headline of a news article, don't read the news article, just hear the headline.
They're radically different.
And they're radically different, which happens a lot where I read the article and it's like the headline was totally misleading. So it's like people are repeating the headline and just go, see, it's fact. Like hormones in chicken, it's a fact. But no one bothered, because I researched this years ago because I kept hearing about hormones in chickens and everything. And I'm like, well, can chickens have hormones? I went and looked it up. It's like, no, it's been illegal since the 1950s. And I'm like, well, there you go. But I went the extra step to verify. Whereas a lot of people just go, they hear the fake headline of hormones in chickens. See, sounds plausible. Doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility, but I never did any fact checking. So anytime I see an abnormally large breast, I'm like, they injected that with some hormones.
When the truth of the matter is, there's also just feed that you can feed animals that just make them bigger and larger.
Fatter.
Yeah.
It's usually more about fattening them up. And also they have different rates when they slaughter animals. I'm sorry, y'all, to get into this detail, but like some chickens, they slaughter them when they're younger and smaller, like roaster chickens, like broiler chickens they see in the rotisserie.
$5 Costco
are
chicken.
Just different size because they're younger. And then for the ones that for the breast production, they sit there and they let them grow till they about to break their legs. They're so big. You know what I mean? Just like there's some dog breeds that have a lot of health conditions because of the interbreeding. What is it? Is a pug or whatever that has
a lot of
like
them. French bulldogs,
like
German shepherds with a hip dysplasia problem for years.
It's kind of the same thing. So I'm not saying that it's not inhumane or there's problems in the poultry. I'm not saying that they can interbreed to the point where they have health problems. But I'm just saying, like, we just take things at face value and we don't double check, and then we just repeat. It's like we just repeat something somebody said and we think we're expert on it because of the Dunning-Kruger.
So that's your fun fact for this Saturday. You can look up the Dunning-Kruger effect. You learn something about chickens. And, why not to listen to all personal trainers? I mean, it's been a really rounded conversation, and I've enjoyed it myself personally. So thanks.
But one of the goals on this channel is like, because we want you to grow in God, but we also want to teach you how to think and how to learn and how to process information for yourself. And I know that if I can teach you that and get you on that path, then you'll be able to navigate your life, whether Virginia and I are here or not. And that's the ultimate goal. So I know a lot of people are like, what does that have to do with Christianity? I'm like, well, it has to do with personal development and being able to process information properly.
God cares about your character and who you're becoming. Okay?
Yep.
We don't want to walk around just being... Yeah. So here's a fun fact. Life for Your Soul is our podcast where we talk about larger topics over a longer period of time, break it down more things, but we don't typically do like hot button topic issues, but it's still that same heart that Rachael was saying of like, we want you to not be deceived. We want you to learn. This show specifically is so that we can talk about more singularly topical things. We want to help you, like Rachael was saying, understand how to think through things and how to process things so that we're not deceived as well, and just to help us grow and better ourselves. So if you're like, I love the topical things, the one topic kind of punchy stuff, you can stay right here. If you also love, or maybe you're a lover of the longer, more bird's eye view kind of situational stuff, you can have it over Life for Your Soul. The episodes are still here on this channel, but they're out on Tuesdays.
Yep.
So stick around.
Yep. So thank you again for listening to us. Thanks for watching to the end of the show. Like, subscribe, and share. And have a great week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.